All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope everyone had a great summer. So we're going to go with roll call. We have everyone here except for Mr. Leclerc. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, can I get a confirmation of the agenda?
That the board confirms the agenda for the meeting of September 12th, 2025.
I get a mover and seconder. Vice Chair Barber, Member Andrews, all those in favor? All right. We have no delegations. I see no unfinished business, no new business, so let's move into reports. And I will hand it over to the chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the media releases throughout the period in which we broke for the summer, all of which have been provided for information, subject to any questions.
Any questions from the board? All right, can I get a resolution for the media release?
That the media releases provided by the Chief of Police are received for information.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Member Graves, Member French, all those in favor? All right, that's carried. Back to you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to 8.2, review of the police operating budget as of P8. As you'll note on the front, through some meetings with Ms. Sachs, we've put together a bit of a dashboard that kind of summarizes a lot of the line-by-line items, and you'll also note on the bottom right a trajectory which kind of compares us to the previous year. So on a snapshot, it's actually quite handy, so it's something the board can get used to seeing. Taking into line by line on the police operating budget, everything is rather well in line. Salary, wages, and benefits for full-time sitting around 71%, which is actually not an entirely true figure because we were waiting on a significant reimbursement from the Ottawa Police Service, which just landed. So that will be reflected in P9 to the tune of about $8,000. So that'll offset us there nicely. Also in line with the slight increase in the salary wages for full-time, you'll note that the salary and wages for part-time are quite under where we normally are. So the offset that we've been using our full-time labor is probably why the community's seen more of the familiar full-time faces around, and it's been going quite well throughout operations and for morale. Moving down into materials and supplies, the training budget's well in line. Our training schedule through the deputies set for the rest of the year. I'm happy to report that we are well in line with all of our training being up to date, now in line with the new CSPA Act. And by the end of 2025, we will, I believe, be completely true to what we need to have. So we were in good shape initially, but just catching up in some areas was a bit of our undertaking for the year. One line that I'll draw your attention to is with respect to the hardware, software, and equipment, which shows to be 228% over. That's actually a note that I caught, and it's a bad bucketing issue. So it just needs to be moved to the IT expense, which we have lots of room for. So that one, on the face of it, being an issue, really is not. Moving down, we've been quite candid about the maintenance and the issues we've been experiencing with the vehicles, mostly due in part to the fact that all but one of our vehicles is over 160,000 kilometers. So they're getting driven, they're getting used, and with that comes some expense. I'll also prime the board for a couple more expenses for the vehicles that are going to land on P9 with respect to tires and some ghost invoices that were being sent to the previous chief's email for some reason that the company didn't actually send to us that we caught. So we'll true that up, but we will still be in good shape. Other than that, well in line with everything. Our grants are coming online for what we have left. We've collected the last outstanding amount for our CSP grant, which expired in April, and waiting on a few more things like the RIDE grant, the Court Security Prisoner Transport grant, which will land here shortly and true us up in the end, so that's tracking well. Outside of that, for the police operating budget, that's my presentation on that.
Member Barber.
Thanks, Chief. A couple of small is this an anomaly?
Thank you. So as far as that relates, the one expense with the public relations that actually hit for the most notable was a purchase of a pop-up tent that's branded for the service, and we've actually had that out at several things. That was kind of the one-off. You'll see our preliminary budget presentation at the next meeting, and the short answer to that is no. We've cut it pretty lean, so tentatively the answer is no, but we don't foresee anything like that one-off purchase that kind of set it off, but that was something we'd forecasted.
Okay, thank you.
Member Graves?
Thanks for the report, Chief. With regards to the vehicles, you said they're at about 160,000 K. Is there a certain limit that you usually go to, or is it individually each vehicle kind of treated as it deems necessary for repairs?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's a good one. Candidly, we hold on to police vehicles in this service longer than I would say any other police service in the province, and I would stand behind that. Right now, and when we get to our capital request for 2026, you'll see the vehicle we're replacing is going to be 8 years old. So in police vehicle talk, 24/7, 365, hard kilometers, non-highway, it adds up. So I will say, and I know the deputy and I have spoken to this, and we will both attest to this, the way that the officers treat the vehicles and the police cruisers here is the reason we're able to get 7 and 8 years out of them, because the world that we've come from bigger services, they're flipping cars every 36 months. And that's, like I said, a testament to the care that the officers are taking to the vehicles. So we try to get as much as we can out of them. We always weigh the cost benefit on everything as it comes. I mean, we understand, and knock on wood, I mean, you get things like transmissions or motors or things, that's a case by case basis, but the wear and tear and the general maintenance we're pretty on top of, and as long as it doesn't outweigh the cost benefit, we usually just end up fixing it and maintaining it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? The only comment I have is just related to what Vice Chair Barber was mentioning with the public relations. I know, Chief, you're big on being visible in the community, especially at community events, so purchases like the pop-up tent, which say Aylmer Police on it, it gives us a really professional look when we're at events, so that's great. All right, can we get a resolution for that?
That the report of the Chief of Police regarding the police/PSB operating budget update P8 be received for information.
I get a mover and seconder, Vice Chair Barber and Member Andrews. All those in favor? Perfect. And back to you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving forward with the crime trends, trued up again to the end of August. You'll note with our violent crime trends, so far we're in quite respectable positioning compared to previous years, and if all stays well, we'll be tracking for probably a very good year with respect to violent crime in Aylmer. Likewise with property crime, again with the nicer weather eventually concluding here, that's generally our peak time with property crime. So again, we don't forecast anything crazy in that regard, and are trending downward in that as well. Drug crime, I've mentioned this is either a feast or famine, and these charges generally are not the simple possession charges, and that's for a multitude of reasons, legislation being one of them. It actually directs the police at this point to seek out all alternatives outside of charging. So for simple possession, it's viewed more as kind of a health epidemic, and the police are directed to basically use extrajudicial measures or warn or things like that. So these charges are the true possession for the purpose of trafficking. So people that have, significant quantities or indicia of trafficking, those charges are the ones that are reflected here. And those, again, are feast or famine. We either have drug investigations where we're going after someone, or incident to arrest, we take someone into custody, lawfully search them, and then find quantities of drugs that result in these charges. So rather, unmeasurable and unforeseen, short of the investigative piece, but all in all, we're doing well combating that. Intimate partner violence, also on the lower end compared to 2024 right now. Motor vehicle collisions, we will likely be on par with the 2024. and there's a quarterly report as it reflects to the collisions forthcoming as well. 911 calls, again, large amount attributed to pocket dials and simple misuse or children using the line. We're at 115 to date. So draw your attention here to foot patrol. So interesting here, the deputy and I have kind of changed the way in which we're measuring our data. Previously, it was on what we called a daily activity report that the officers would just fill out with kind of ones and twos, and it wasn't, in our opinion, overly accurate. We now have incidents that are all but counting the minute of the foot patrol time. So while it appears on the face of it, it's a little bit askew, this is true data. And in fact, I had a meeting that I appeared virtually with the Chamber of Commerce here yesterday, and the business owners that were on that were very complimentary of the increased foot patrol presence that they've seen. So albeit the data appears opposite that, undoubtedly we are far more visible and the foot patrol hours are true and far greater. Yearly mental health trend, rather on track. This again includes live calls that are mental health related and any follow-ups that we assign to our MCERT worker, which is doing a phenomenal job in taking over kind of where the police leave off and system navigating for people. So subject to any questions, that's that report.
Any questions or comments from Member French?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I think these statistics are very encouraging, and I really like the charts because I know we've been doing them, but it just seems like it's so clear and concise so that we can see all the numbers. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Barber?
Bike patrol, bike patrol, how did that season go?
We're sitting currently at 15 hours of bike patrol right now, so pretty good. The fact of the matter with the bike patrol is even when we get it out, we're sending them to calls. So they get bogged down, but we've got 4 fully trained bike patrol officers that actually quite enjoy getting out, and in fact have been out in the evenings as well, which we haven't done before, kind of on the back streets and kind of the park paths and places they may not be expected. So,
Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, can we get a resolution?
That the report of the Chief of Police regarding quarterly statistical updates and trends and comparisons be received for information.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Member French, Member Graves, all those in favor? And that's carried. Back to you, Chief.
thank you, Mr. Chair. In line with the motor vehicle collisions, and Member French will be happy to see there's some charts here. When we submit our accident reports, there's a company that manages the back end of this for us. So before, it used to be all in-house. Insurance companies would contact us. It would take up valuable administrative time for our staff to then farm out these requests. We have now contracted a company, and this is at no cost to us. So they handle all of this, and it also assists with the officer entry time, because the accident report that they have to fill out, the old one was rather labor intensive and, in our opinion, rather archaic. So the officers now have a more digital format where they're able to do the accident at the roadside. They're able to import the Google map, and they can actually have the map true instead of trying to come up with a drawing, which is going quite well. So the way that they're able to do this now too, even for something as simple as being at the scene of the accident, the officer can email off the driver information to the involved parties roadside before they even get to the station. So the efficiencies have been great. The flip side of it is they also provide us with these quarterly statistic breakdowns and kind of the on-scene collisions, how many people are involved, notable locations. Notably, we've had no fatalities this year, which is obviously excellent. Any historic fatalities we've had have generally been pedestrian related, which is why most recently, as the deputy had mentioned previously, we focused on the crossover project and actually had officers monitoring those based on some complaints that we'd received from the public. Happy to report no charges were laid. I think we had 2 warnings out of that, and most of it was attributed back to pedestrian mistiming, simply hitting the button and not gauging the traffic properly. So education is going to be our friend with that. All data collision, you'll see here on page number 6, it marker points all of the locations in which there were collisions, which obviously for us is quite good, being intersection related, and even includes private parking lot that's over the damage threshold that requires a reporting. When it breaks it down, obviously, into month, January was our heavy month with collisions, which undoubtedly is generally weather-related. Fridays also seemed to be the day of the week in which collisions were most prevalent, and the collision time, 4 p.m. You'll note on page 10, generally the road conditions were clear, which is an interesting statistic, and the roads were dry. Most of the driver actions that were noted within the accident reports were driving properly, improper turns, close second, and then unknown, because obviously at collisions, there's some people that are involved that have to give statements, and there's some people that don't. So we can go off what we can see, but that is directly correlated to that. You'll see within the collisions, most have been normal. There's been no impairments related to the collisions. The impact, single motor vehicle striking unattended vehicles is leading the line with 9. Turning movement followed by a close second, tied with rear end. Also notes on page 17 where we had some fail to remain collisions. And again, where the damage threshold is over the measurable amount and the second party has not remained at scene. So again, in line with our fail to remains, there's a correlation between where our most collisions are, which is in fact at the main intersection, which is not really a surprise because that's where the volume is. One collision involving a pedestrian. No collisions involving a cyclist, and no collisions involving drugs or alcohol. When you break it down on page 26, as I mentioned, it shows the incidents and where most of the collisions were prevalent. Parties indicates how many people were present. And again, exactly what we knew about the main intersection. Subject to any questions, that's the Q2 report for collisions within the town.
Any questions or comments from the board? None? I'll comment. I love the breakdown of this. It's nice to see when to stay off the road, so. Can I get a resolution?
That the report from the Chief of Police collision statistics be received for information.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Vice Chair Barber, Member Andrews, all those in favor? And that is carried. Back to you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief presentation on the Crime Severity Index as provided by Statistics Canada, which, as the board is well aware, is generally provided annually. And within the executive summary, for the benefit of the board and the public, it kind of goes into how this is measured and what this is, because on the face of it, it's a value, but on the back end of it, there's a lot of algorithms that go into determining what comprises that. And again, it's measured on not only the seriousness of the offense, but on the back end, what the people are sentenced to in court and what the penalty is. So there's a measure between the two that then spits out a formula that Statistics Canada computes with all of the incidents and all of the charge data we upload throughout the year, and then gives out Crime Severity Index numbers. So our overall, which is quite a respectable number, is 48.5. The provincial average is 60.7, so we're well below that. Just looking at a geographical comparator in St. Thomas next door, they've done some good work there to bring their crime severity index down, but they're still at a 65.9. Hanover, as the board knows, is our basically twin town and our twin police service, and they're at 110.8. So no slight on the work they're doing there. They have some different problems and some different issues as a result of their geography, but obviously quite in excess of where we are. Gananoque, again, very comparable to us in population and demographic at 49, Port Hope's at 31, and Deep River's at 33. So going into the more breakdown of the overall crime severity index, but particularly with the violent crime severity index, the provincial average for that is 78.5, and we're sitting at 57.7. So again, quite respectable. The numbers with our comparators also listed, and again, not to pick on Hanover, but 129.5 for violent crime severity index is rather significant. And I think, you know, you look at Smith Falls at 135.2, I think we're doing something right, so, and St. Thomas at 81. So obviously nothing alarming that's standing out there. I do strongly believe in the data that we are uploading to Statistics Canada. It's kind of a garbage in, garbage out system. If you're not putting in proper data, you're not getting proper results, and we're really true with our data and kind of showing what's actually happening here. So, subject to any questions from the board, that's the Crime Severity Index report for the town of Aylmer for 2024.
Any questions from the board? Vice Chair Barber.
Thank you. To the chief. Are the senior officers of the police departments across Ontario doing anything to advocate for some type of bail reform?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So certainly they are, and I can tell you that Chief Trong in London did a very moving presentation the other day as it related to the gun violence they're seeing in the town and what they're calling for bail reform. We also sat, both the deputy and I, on a call with the Solicitor General yesterday, who called this with all of the chiefs, basically looking for ideas at the provincial level at how we can improve community safety and what kind of ideas the group collaboratively can put forward. It was a fruitful conversation, but at the end of the day, all of the police leaders were unified in the fact that it's a federal issue that needs to be fixed, and we're putting Band-Aids on a bullet hole with provincial money right now. So until something's truly fixed on the back end, we're doing what we can. Does sound, Mr. Polyev announced a bill yesterday as well that has to do with bail and moving that forward. So we're in a bit of a holding pattern. I know the Police Association of Ontario and the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police have been very vocal and actually working collaboratively as well. So I'm hopeful something starts moving in the fall, but right now we're in a holding pattern.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, can we get a resolution?
That report, PSB 13-25, regarding the crime severity index data for the town of Aylmer and comparison services be received as information.
I got a mover and seconder. Member Graves, Member French. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bring your attention to our 2026 capital expenditure request. So in line with meeting with Ms. Sachs, it's our intention to bring forward the capital request at this meeting, and then, as I mentioned, the next meeting we'll bring forward our draft 2026 operating budget for the board's review. Simply two requests. The first one, entirely in line with our cruiser replacement schedule, as I had indicated, the vehicle that we're looking to move forward and replace is going to be 8 years old when that time comes for 2026. Presently, it's 7 years old, has in excess of 170,000 kilometers on it, and has been put to good use. So what we do with our diligence every time that we're looking at kind of replacing the fleet, we look at a couple things. So first and foremost, we look at what the price of the vehicles are, and that's ever changing. We are fortunate enough that we're able to tap into the provincial policing cooperative pricing. So we pay the same for a cruiser that Toronto pays, that Ottawa pays, that the OPP pay. So that doesn't change. The last purchase we had where we brought forward the F-150, which has been an excellent addition to the fleet. At the time, Ford had priced that under the Explorers. That is no longer the case, and that left us with the purchase of either an Explorer or a Dodge Durango. Our experience in reaching out to our peers with the Dodges is they're just not really standing up. The Fords are rather robust and kind of proven. The added benefit going Explorer to Explorer, mind you, we're about 3 model years different. We should be able to take some of the trunk racking and things that are in the vehicle and just simply move them over, which can certainly reduce some of the costs. The ALPR system as well is movable as well, so we're going to do that too. So to that end, we have requested putting forth Ford Explorer for the replacement of Unit 1, which would be in 2026. For our capital ultimate request with the lighting, the upfitting, and the deckling and everything, computer for $85,000. So subject to any questions on the first request, that's our capital request as far as a fleet replacement for 2026.
Any questions or comments on that? Vice Chair Barber?
Just a quick question. Would this be a fully marked vehicle, or would you go stealth mode?
Great question, thank you. The deputy and I have taken the approach that we do not want to have fully unmarked vehicles. The reason for that is there's a time and a place for the traffic enforcement, but our big push and our big belief is visibility. Many times, and I had this feedback from the public, we would have an officer driving around in an unmarked car, which, albeit most of the residents would become live to fairly quickly. However, out of sight, out of mind, and that visibility wasn't there. That's why we deckled up Unit 2, which was the charcoal cruiser we have that now has decals on it, just to get that visibility. This will be another marked vehicle, complete with the same decals as Unit 2 right now. And the only stealth vehicle per se would be the truck with the subdued deckling. And that would be our position moving forward.
Good response and great logic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Member French?
Just for the benefit of the public, could you just quickly explain how it's going to be financed?
Thanks for that question. So both of these capital requests are actually funded through the police operating reserve. So this doesn't actually hit the tax point and doesn't actually hit tax dollars in that sense. It's reserves through previous surpluses out of our side.
Thank you. Great question. Any other questions or comments? Nope. Seeing none, we'll move on to body armor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the second request is in line with body armor, which is what you see the officers wearing on the outside. We've gone to an external system, mostly due to the fact that there's so many things for the officers to have to carry. Gone are the days of just a belt and a shirt. So we, every year in line with our performance evaluations, we review equipment and we diary date things that are coming up. 95% of our staff's ballistic vests are expired or coming up for expiry, so the time is of the essence. Also, add into a fact that the Community Safety and Policing Act now requires either external hard armor, level 3 armor, or the ability for officers to slide metal ballistic plates into their vest. This does just that. So rather than outfit everybody with external, expensive, heavy armor that they would take with their duty bag or just one per vehicle, we've gone to the more cost-effective request of just having everyone with a uniform vest that then can receive the panels. We have 4 marked police cruisers that will have those panels within and accessible should they be required by the officers. To replace everyone within the service, and we have with our newer members gone to this one already to kind of get ahead of it. The capital request for that would be no more than $20,000. And again, in line with the previous request for the vehicle, would be funded from the current police operating reserve.
Any questions or comments? Member Graves?
So, Chief, I presume that the lighter weight armor vest there is more popular amongst the officers?
It's 24% lighter on average, depending on what they put on their vest, which also helps with their back and shoulders and that kind of stuff. And it's been a positive feedback from other services, knowing the difference of the weight as well. So, and there's actually more coverage on the sides because they overlap, because there's studies indicate that that's where officers tend to get shot is on their sides. So now the vest will overlap on the side, giving them almost double protection per se.
Would these be lighter than what they currently have?
At 24% average lighter, yes.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions on these 2 requests? No? All right, can we get a resolution?
That report, PSP 14-25, regarding the 2026 Police Service Capital Operating Request be received as information, and that the board authorizes the purchase of a replacement cruiser and body armor.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Member Andrews, Vice Chair Barber. All those in favor? And that is carried. All right, on to 8.7.
So this report before the board is proposing changes to the meeting schedule. For 2026, the board typically adopts a schedule in November, so I'm presenting this early to collect some feedback. Regularly, the Police Service Board holds 10 meetings per year, and if the schedule were to remain in place for 2026, we would continue to have meetings on the second Friday of each month from January to June, and then September to December. Under the new legislation, police service boards are only required to meet at least 4 times per year, and that number can also vary depending on the size of the police services. It also reflects changes in capacity and administrative structures of the service. So just acknowledging that a smaller service like Aylmer, senior leadership carries multiple operational and administrative responsibilities, so they may benefit from fewer, more focused meetings. We're proposing a revised schedule for 4 core meetings at minimum in the months of April, June, October, and November because they align with certain reporting and decision-making requirements. April, it's required for the presentation of the audited financial statements and probation reporting. June is required for the presentation of the annual report. October is required to review preliminary capital and operating budgets, and November is required to adopt the following year's meeting schedule and approve the final budget. Meetings can certainly be called at any time with approval from the chair, so it does provide some flexibility to respond to any issues that may come up. And it does align with some leadership transitions and maybe changing things to just match the rhythm better for our service. While the recommendation is for 4 core meetings, it is also a good time to identify potentially 1 to 3 additional meeting dates, even as placeholders to assist members in planning their schedules, and it can be canceled later if deemed necessary. And just one important thing to note, the current collective agreements are set to expire December 31st, 2026, which will add additional meetings for bargaining and negotiations. So this just supports reducing the number of pre-scheduled meetings that can help us balance those commitments. For financial impact, it is minimal, although reducing the number may have a slight change related to staff preparation time. So this is open for feedback from the board. We can certainly keep the 10 meeting schedule, but it is proposed if we'd like to reduce to keep those 4 core meetings in those months and potentially add 1 to 3 more.
All right, I'll open it up to the board for discussion. Thoughts, comments, Member French?
I don't see anything wrong with this, especially in a year when we're doing bargaining and negotiations. Actually, I was talking to the deputy chief the other day. I just happened to be in Aylmer, and he was walking out doing his job, and he was very busy, but he took time to talk to me, and we were just talking about, the time that it takes for bargaining. So as a committee, like if we have 10 meetings next year, plus all our bargaining meetings, it starts to add up to a lot of meetings. So especially in years where we're doing that kind of extra work, it can become quite overwhelming for everybody. So I'm kind of on board with this. I don't see anything wrong with the 4 meetings and then possibly setting a couple other dates aside. And then those are kind of, if we need them, so be it. And I mean, we know we can always have extra meetings anyways at the call of the chair. So I am in favor of this, actually.
Any other comments? Member Andrews?
Steal that. So what would be the meeting lengths if we were to change to 4 times a year?
I'm going to ask Michelle for that answer.
So if we wanted to remain with the Friday schedule beginning at 9 a.m., it would depend on the content of the agenda. For example, this meeting may have been a little bit longer because we haven't met since June. I believe we don't really have a, similar to council, a cutoff in our procedural bylaw. I can double check that, but if there is a request of a board member that it's like a 2-hour meeting or no more than 2 hours, we could agree on that as a board.
Okay. And that was part of my concern, maybe it doesn't work especially during a weekday, just because some of us have jobs outside of this. So I'm okay with it. I think that we should have meetings set in place, contingencies, just in case. If we do change to this structure and we realize that, hey, we're just not catching up, we're not getting the information that we need, maybe there's an opportunity mid-year to review, revise, I don't know. That would be my suggestion.
Vice Chair Barber.
Thank you. I support the concept of moving forward with the change, subject to any revisions that may pose themselves as we go forward.
Member Graves.
Yeah, I would say that I agree as well, long as we can, if there's something that comes up, set up a meeting and deal with it at that time.
My original thought when I was reading this was maybe moving to like every other month. But again, with four scheduled meetings and we can do 1 to 3, that still works out almost every other month anyways. So I would support this. And then if we set 2 to 3 additional meeting dates, just so we know in our schedule, like I'm thinking January would definitely be a month I would like to meet, at least, especially starting the year off, because we usually vote for the chair at that point and the vice chair. So starting the year off, getting that in order so we know what direction we're going, and then just figuring out another date or two within that schedule. Yeah, Member Graves?
To the chair, you're right. I believe it probably every other month, since you got July and August. We don't typically meet anyway, but probably come close to probably what you might come up with.
Can we leave that with you to work a couple extra dates in there? And
Yep. I will plan to provide a finalized meeting schedule for approval at a future meeting. So, yeah.
Chief?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I would be more, from the operational sense, in line with in every other month. The reason being, if there was something operational that we needed to table, I just would hate to have to shelve it. But that's, again, at the board's discretion. So if it works out to be that way anyway, no problem, but just I would hate to get behind on just operational decisions. But
with that being said, would anybody be opposed to doing every other month? Except for July and August, unless we need to call a meeting?
That's going to work out to be, what, about 5 throughout the year, right?
Most likely 5, 6 meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, we can set that.
Okay.
All right, can we get a resolution on that?
That report, PSB 11-25, regarding 2026 meeting schedule be received as information, and that the board provide direction on the 2026 meeting schedule, and that staff provide a finalized 2026 meeting schedule for approval at a future meeting of the board.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Member Graves, Member Andrews, all those in favor? That is carried. On to 8.8.
This final report before the board is presenting a proposed procurement policy for the Aylmer Police Service Board. So again, under legislation, the Police Service Board is required to establish their own rules and procedures in performing their duties. The Aylmer Police Service Board has historically followed general purchasing principles, but there was an absence of a formal specific policy. So that has been created just to provide clear direction. And it does take into account the unique nature of policing. We do have a memorandum of understanding with the town of Aylmer to provide financial services and support. However, a procurement policy for a police service board is different in that you need to account for things like security concerns, confidentiality. There's specialized equipment and some timing things that need to be considered for the nature of policing. So the proposed procurement policy addresses areas regarding procurement thresholds for formal quotations and competitive bidding, sole source, emergency, and confidential procurement allowances, delegated authority for the chief of police and board roles and oversight, cooperative procurement provisions for collaborative purchases, contract management practices, records retention requirements, and vendor security vetting. So this proposed policy was developed in reference to other police service procurement bylaws, and it was also adapted with input from internal staff to reflect best practices. Today, we are seeking board feedback to ensure that the policy reflects our local priorities and practical realities, and once finalized, we can use it for consistent, transparent, and secure procurement practices. There are no direct financial impacts from adopting this policy. It just introduced more structure and accountability.
Any questions, comments, feedback from the board? Vice Chair.
Thank you. To the chief, how would this revised policy affect, if at all?
Thank you for that. So, in consultation with Michelle, really not at all. And you'll see within 6.4.1, basically pre-authorized or predetermined amounts for the spending authority of the chief and the deputy are built within, which was kind of one of the unique things we took away from some of the other police services. So, forecast from this, not at all. This would be well in line with operations, and anything outside of that, we'd be coming back to the board for anyhow, so.
Any other comments or feedback? All right, seeing none, can we get a resolution?
That report, PSB 12-25, regarding procurement policy be received for information, and that the board review and provide feedback on the draft procurement policy, and that staff incorporate feedback into the final version of the procurement policy to be presented at a future meeting of the board for approval and adoption as a bylaw.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Member French, Member Andrews, all those in favor? And that is carried. All right, we move on to correspondence. Any comments or questions, feedback about correspondence we received? Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can, just draw the board's attention to 9.2, which has to do with the temporary assistance request. In line with the Community Safety and Policing Act, if any police service requests temporary assistance and it's granted by the chief, I'm required to report that back to the board, which is what this is doing. This was an all chiefs request that had gone out in late June for the Ottawa Police Service seeking assistance with uniform patrol duties for the Canada Day celebrations and an influx of people. To that end, the deputy and I managed to send one whole platoon, which was a sergeant and 2 constables, down to assist. And for all intents and purposes, it was very successful and a very good operational experience and exposure for those officers. So, subject to any questions, that's our mandatory reporting requirement back to the board.
Any comments on? No. Thank you, Chief. It's great to see our officers involved in helping out other police services, and I'm sure it was a great opportunity for them. I'd like to just comment on 9.4, the reappointment of Ken Graves. I don't remember the board having a input on that, did we? No. It's great to see. You've been a very valuable member of the board, so thank you very much. It's great to see you're going to be with us for another 2 years. And now we move into closed session. We get a resolution.
That the Police Service Board shall move into a meeting close to the public at 9:45 a.m. to consider Chief of Police report regarding education requests and Chief of Police report regarding litigation, and that consideration of these items is closed to the public pursuant to Section 44(2)B and E of the Community Safety and Policing Act 2019 as amended, as the subject matter pertains to B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including members of the police service or any other employees of the board, and E, litigation or potential litigation affecting the board, including matters before administrative tribunals.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Member Andrews, Member French, Chief?
Mr. Chair, just before we go into closed, subject to your approval and that of the board, I would just like to make a quick addition to the closed session with respect to a personnel update, if it is so approved.
I don't see an issue with that. The board agrees? All right, we can add that in. Do we need a new resolution to add that?
It would just probably also fall under B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including members of the police service or any other employees of the board.
All right, can I get a mover and seconder? Vice Chair Barber, Member Andrews, all those in favor? And we'll move into closed. All right. Can we get a resolution?
That the board rise from the meeting close to the public at 10:02 a.m. and reports the following. That the board receive the reports of the chief of police regarding education requests, litigation, and personnel update for information, and that the board provided confidential direction to the chief of police.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Vice Chair Barber, Member French. All those in favor? All right, and let's move to adjournment.
That the board now adjourn at 10:03 a.m.
Mover and seconder. Member Andrews, Member Graves, all those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.